The big political news of the day, of course, is that former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg is going to be filing for the Alabama Democratic primary today. Now, some of you might be asking, well, isn't New Hampshire the first primary state? Yes, it is. So why is he filing in Alabama first? He's filing in Alabama because Alabama has the earliest deadline in the nation. So Mike Bloomberg has not made a formal announcement yet. He still is not necessarily running for president, but it stands to reason that if he's filing to run and get on the ballot in the state of Alabama, that he probably is running for president, which, now, he's flirted with this for years. 2008, a little bit in 2016, and even a little bit in 2012. This seems to be the first time he's actually taking the leap and running. Now, Mike Bloomberg was a Democrat for most of his life. Then he switched parties to become a Republican to run for mayor of New York City. Then he switched parties to become an independent in anticipation of an independent presidential bid. Then last year, he switched parties to become a registered Democrat in anticipation of possibly running the Democratic primary. Then comes March, and he decides to write an op-ed announcing all the reasons that he's not running for president. So what's changed now? Now, apparently, Bloomberg has said that to others, he hasn't said anything publicly, that Biden is fading, and that he doesn't believe Biden necessarily has the wherewithal to beat someone like Elizabeth Warren. It's no secret that Mike Bloomberg has a lot of animus towards Donald Trump, never been a fan of his. And in fact, let's take a look at the 2016 Democratic Convention when Mike Bloomberg unloaded both barrels on Donald Trump.
And most of us who have our names on the door know that we are only as good as our word, but not Donald Trump. Through his career, Donald Trump has left behind a well-documented record of bankruptcies and thousands of lawsuits and angry stockholders and contractors who feel cheated and disillusioned customers who feel they've been ripped off. Trump says he wants to run the nation like he's running his business? God help us.
There you have it. You clearly can tell Mike Bloomberg was waiting a long time to get off his chest how he really felt about Donald Trump. Well, a lot of you are watching around the country and may not be as familiar with Mike Bloomberg as we are here in New York City. So let me give you my take. Now, in just a couple of minutes, we're going to talk with Dominic and really find out the genesis of Mike Bloomberg's political career, how he was with the press as mayor of New York City, and how that's going to translate to a national Democratic audience. In fact, a lot of people are wondering how Democrats are greeting the candidacy of this former Republican and former independent. New York One, Spectrum News New York One, caught up with some high-profile New York Democrats in Puerto Rico, where they're down there for Somos El Futuro. Here's what some Democrats had to say about Mike Bloomberg entry into the presidential race.
Well, obviously, another New Yorker into the race. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement. There's buzz in this room with regards to the former mayor of the city of New York, Michael Bloomberg, getting into the race. We'll see whether or not this country has an appetite for another billionaire.
Michael Bloomberg has a tremendous track record of success that he can run on as a mayor for 12 years. He moved America forward in the context of moving the biggest city in the United States of America forward. And so he has a strong case to make, and he should be welcome to the field.
He's going to run as a Democrat, he's going to run as an independent. How's he going to do that? I don't really see a path for someone like him.
So very interesting that even progressives like Hakeem Jeffries and Tish James seem to be somewhat open to a Bloomberg candidacy, at least open to him running, whether or not they're going to support him or not. Well, it all began for Mike Bloomberg here in New York City when this former Democrat became a Republican just to run, and the guy that was covering Mike Bloomberg from the very beginning, that moderated almost all the early debates Bloomberg was in the primary, in the general, and then in his reelection, was Dominic, star political reporter, a legend here in New York. These days, he's with Verizon, Fios TV, and RNN. Dominic, thanks for coming. Great to see you.
It's an honor to be here with you, Frank. You're the legend.
Oh, please. So give us your take on Mike Bloomberg as a politician. You've had a ringside seat at seeing him develop from sort of a political novice to where he is today. Tell us, were you surprised by him finally jumping in?
I'm not surprised at all. I'm glad, Frank, that you used the word. Conventional wisdom said he had absolutely no chance at all, an overwhelming Democratic New York, of becoming mayor of New York City. But I am telling you, Frank, that Bloomberg is no joke. And the reason why he's no joke, he's a moderate, and that may not play well in a Democratic primary that's going to the left, to the left, to the left. But looking at the general election and looking at the resources, I've watched firsthand the resources that Bloomberg is. He doesn't talk about spending, he goes about spending, and he's actually willing to do it. And so he was a long shot at becoming mayor, got elected, served 2 terms, was able to use his resources to overturn term limits.
Let's talk about that. I'm curious, and you've covered a lot of races around the country and followed New Yorkers as they've been around the country. How do you think that third term, basically overriding, with the help of the city council, the twice said will of the voters, how do you think that's going to play with Americans around the country?
The big issue that Bloomberg is dealing with right now, Frank, he will do exceedingly well. You know, lots of people say they predicted President Trump's victory. I'm one of the folks that actually, on day one, said, because I saw that President Trump was able to resonate in ways that few candidates ever have been able to do so. And I knew it was not about resources, it was about a winning message that President Trump brought to the table. I am telling you now, I'm willing to go on a limb again and tell you that Bloomberg is no joke.
So and now it's very funny that we're here talking about this again, because the first time I was ever on TV with you was 12 years ago, when I was the chairman of the Draft Mike Bloomberg for President Committee back in 2007.
Yes.
And now here we are talking about the same story back now here in 2019. It's clear he has a lot of appeal towards independent voters, towards moderates, maybe even some Republicans. But given the money that he's donated to Republicans over the years, given what he's done with being kind of rough with the teachers union and some labor unions, given the un-PC comments that he's made about women over the years, given his comments about stop and frisk and police over the years, how is that going to play in a Democratic primary nationally? Not well.
That's the problem for Bloomberg. How does he go to South Carolina and sell himself, particularly to the African-American electorate there, when you look at stop and frisk here in New York? There are those that say, because of policies that started under Giuliani as mayor, and then on to Bloomberg, that it made New York a manageable city, a safe city. But there are those in communities of color that say that minorities were unfairly picked on, if you will, by the NYPD. You mentioned the word debate. I want to go back to that, because I did moderate the Bloomberg debate. It was me, Bloomberg, and Bill Thompson. Bill Thompson was the Democratic nominee.
This was in 09.
Yes, this was in 09. And I didn't know how Bloomberg would be able to carry himself in a live setting with a studio audience, whether or not he would stand up to the challenge. He did exceedingly well. He ended up barely winning that race, but he did exceedingly well, and he's got good people around him, like Howard Wolfson, that worked with Hillary Clinton when she went from being First Lady to U.S. Senator.
Can you stick around a few minutes?
Of course, Frank, anything for you.
We're going to continue with Dominic Carter next. Dominic Carter knows where all the bones are buried in terms of New York politics. He's probably buried a few himself. He knows everything there is to know when it comes to journalism in this city and in this state, and everything when it comes to politics in the city and the state. And we're going to get some more insight into Mike Bloomberg apparently jumping into the Democratic race for president. Stay tuned. You're watching Liquid Lunch on NEWSMAX TV. I'm Frank Morano.